All right, Gator fans, I have a very special treat for you. Danny Warfel is back with us. And I'm so excited because we are going to get to hear firsthand about Florida's new head coach, John Sumrall, from somebody who knows him better than any of the rest of us have gotten to know him yet. Danny, thanks for joining us today.
Allie, it's great to be with you, and congrats on all your continued success. I'm seeing you all over the place, and great commentary on all the things. So thanks for all the work that you do. I know it's not easy, run around picking up kids, going to here and there, being all these things, but you're doing a great job.
Well, I appreciate that. So I think that it was maybe surprising to most Gator fans to hear that you were super involved in this coaching search. And actually, you had mentioned beforehand the GM search. And so this is kind of a new revelation for most fans that have come out in the last couple of days. And I think really exciting for fans to hear that one of our own was heavily involved in this selection process. How did you get involved?
Kind of back around the time when Coach Napier was let go, I was concerned about, in particular, some turnover from players, and I had developed relationship with players over time. And so I was just trying to be around more to try to encourage them to say, hey, this is the Gators. Hang around. And in that process, I told Scott Strickland if there's anything I could do, I'd be happy to help. And I was really honored, when he asked me to be a part of this initially, the search for both the coach and the GM. And, probably like you might think, I was a little hesitant because I said, what I don't want to do is like sort of kind of be a part of this. And then someone picks a coach and then I've got to put my stamp of approval on it. Like
Right.
I'm always going to support our coaches, and that's great and fine. But like, if I'm going to give a lot of my life and time and energy to this process, like I want to be in it. And I'm just very honored that he really did. I think that the core committee was him and kind of the head athletic administrator, Duke Warner, over football, and myself. We did every Zoom. We flew to more cities than I've been to in a long time. And it's also like being a CIA agent. Like, you can't just fly to a city. You've got to, like, you know, I can't give you all the secrets because we don't have to do it again. Hopefully
Right.
not for a long time.
Not for
But
a long time.
yes, not for a long time. That's right, because Sumrall said he's going to be there forever.
Mhm.
So, but it was a great experience. There's a lot of other people that were involved in terms of like turnkey, and we were reporting back to the board of directors, and Amy Haas was involved when the GM piece. So, anyway, it was a fascinating experience. I was really impressed with how it went, and incredibly happy with how it ended.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, this is the first coaching search for Florida that you have been involved in.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I've not been around or a part of anything else, and so it was my first one.
And how many coaches would you say you personally talked to?
I think, overall, we talked to probably close to 12 or so. I think we, multiple Zoom calls with different coaches, and then many in person with different coaches as well that really vetted. I was, you kind of you get the overarching data on everybody, and Turnkey ZRG is a fantastic group. I've heard great things about them, and then Chad Chatlos, who was the guy we worked with, he actually hired the search for the new Heisman Trophy Trust CEO. So I had just done some interviews with him prior to that on another project, and he was great to work with from beginning to end. And actually, that was one of the crazy things I saw online, where that somehow something went sideways there. No, that was a great
Mhm.
relationship all the way through. But he provided great data, great insight. So you're kind of looking at these data things, but then the real trick is what you see on paper is only part of the story. Who is the person? Who is the man? How do they lead men? How do they handle different things? And this is a unique, incredible opportunity at Florida that's not built for everybody.
Yeah.
And so that was a lot of the work was, not just reading something, but like who taped this guy's ankles when he was a player 20 years ago, and what do they think of him? What does the assistant strength coach think of this person? What does you're finding out all the different things to build a narrative around the people, and then you go visit with them, you ask them the tough questions, and you kind of go through that process.
So you mentioned at least one of the misconceptions around this search, and that was that Turnkey somehow fired us. I did see that on social media. And so that is unequivocally did not happen. You guys had a great relationship with them.
Oh yeah, and it's actually even funny language too, because I think we hired them, so I'm not sure how they
How
fire us.
they fire us,
Even
right?
just even just semantically, it's different. But no, it was great. Chad did a fantastic job. Really enjoyed working with him, start to finish. Really class act guy. Well done.
So it is. We used him with Todd Golden as well, didn't we? Or Turnkey in general, maybe not Chad, but we used Turnkey with Golden as well, I believe. So the relationship is intact for everybody at home. There is not any rumor, no truth to the rumor that we have a soured relationship. And is so. Am I taking that to mean that there's also no truth to the rumor that they gave us a list of candidates and we ignored that list?
Oh, that's not true at all. I mean, we all kind of agreed on a big list, and then we started honing that down together, and we went lockstep with that, and took Chad's advice all along the way. And he's got to also craft what's best for us. And that's he doesn't just get to pick the person either. But it was certainly, I think everybody was really pleased with how it went and how it ended.
So did you guys come up with a list of criteria outside of wins and losses and stats and stuff and give it to Turnkey and say, hey, we're looking for X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of that. You're also talking about a job where there's probably only a handful of people on the planet that are even remotely qualified to do it. So it's
Yeah.
not like you've got thousands and thousands of people to sift through. So you kind of have their data, but then you also have like, what are the things that matter to us? What are the things that we've learned over the process? This is a different day and age for college football than even 5 years ago. So like what was fantastic and successful 5 or 10 years ago may not be the cutting edge for today. So you had to
Yeah.
keep those things in mind. I think a lot of things about Florida are unique, and we will probably get into some more of those as we talk about the big sort of, for me, thing that I had to kind of get over with John Sumrall was I had in my mind we're going to go find Steve Spurrier,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of fans did as well. And for at least a big part of this search, we kind of maybe thought we did. So there was this excitement around Lane Kiffin and offense, and so that was the thing. But I tell you, just talking to John about that specific thing, I mean, he hit that head on so quickly. In fact,
Mhm.
at the press conference, like every possible thing I think Gator fans were worried about, at some point he hit on it in a really masterful way. And so I just think he went right into that, and he started talking. Even in our very first Zoom, he said, "Danny, I think at Florida you need to be playing in 11 personnel and a lot of 10 personnel." And I said to him, I said, "10 personnel? What's that?" And he paused for a minute, and he was like, "Does Danny Werfel not know what 10 personnel is?" And I'm like, "No, I actually do know what it is. I've just not seen it."
Yeah.
And your fans know that would be one running back with four receivers, like no tight ends, no other, just like one running back, four receivers is 10
Might be
personnel.
music to this year's fans' ears.
I know, right? Like, so that right out the gate, I'm like, oh, let's keep talking. And then, he also on that front, some of the coaches were in position to, if they were going to come, they probably bring their whole staff, bring their offensive staff, and you'd be happy with that. Well, if he just said, "Yeah, I'm coming and I'm bringing all my staff," and like, I mean, but he's like, "Oh no, no, no! I love my staff. They're great for here. Some people will come, but we're going to get the best of the best when it comes to the coordinators." And so anyway, that was a piece that maybe was a criteria on the front end, that actually the process led us to believe in something that was slightly different than what we thought at the beginning.
Are there any other misconceptions about this search out there that that we should clear up?
I mean, I don't know how long you have. Like, honestly, I don't like. I follow the Gators. I love the Gators. I haven't, I guess, lived in sort of the deep waters of what the Twitterverse is. And honestly, I'm so out of touch. I wasn't even sure what a message board was until the last 6 weeks. I thought I didn't know what that was. Well, I know now. Trust me.
Yeah.
And it's like literally most everything that I saw or read was just not true. And so it's just so shocking to me. I mean, we could go over a lot of things, but like one of the big ones I just saw, there was this report that said Lincoln Riley and his agent Trace Armstrong
Mhm.
had reached out to the Gators multiple times, and we wouldn't talk to them.
Mhm.
And I mean, if I was a fan and saw that, I'd be furious. I'd be like, "Are you kidding me? This dude, like, if you play quarterback for him, you have a 50%
And
chance of."
Heisman. Mhm.
So what? But I mean, the reality is, one, Trace Armstrong's not even his agent, so like, there's no credibility there.
Right.
Two, we reached out multiple times to try to talk to Lincoln Riley. I mean, I was getting ready to like drive a go kart out there to talk to him myself because I don't. I've learned not to necessarily trust agents in this process.
Yeah.
I live in a world where we usually all trust each other and work hard at Desire Street and the Werfel Foundation, and there's a lot of synergy, and we're not trying to like hose each other over. But this is a different game. I understand. So no, we reached out multiple times. We even didn't even trust the contact through the agent, so we actually had someone reach out to him personally, and I don't know why. For whatever reason, maybe he's wants to stay, or maybe he's got a different job lined up later. But he didn't want to talk to us. We did the best we could there. But like, if I was a fan and I saw that, I'd have been mad. But it's unequivocally not even close to true.
Which is interesting too, because that I think originally came from a national writer. Well, I was sitting in the stands. I can't remember if it was the Florida State game or the Tennessee game where that came across. Kind of the ticker essentially is that Lincoln Riley wanted this job and we had no interest. So it is wild how these things get started, and I do. It feels like you understand why the fan base feels wary, and a lot of it is misconceptions and rumors and untrue things, but some of it is too the concept of on paper you got a G5 coach from the state of Louisiana, which is not something we thought we would say two searches in a row, but there is a lot of difference between the two, and I feel like press conference really highlighted that, and John did a really good job of showing who he is, which in turn shows how he is not his predecessor. But what did you see in him that you didn't see in others that you met with?
Well, there's a couple things there. I mean, like, um, before I'd have got involved, I wouldn't have had a G5 coach high on my list. And, and I get why people are mad. Like, we should be really good in football, and
Hmm.
we've been really bad. So, like, we should be mad. People should be mad. And, I think a lot of that frustration is attributed to the coaches, which is fair. I think a lot of the frustration is going to like, who's in charge? Well, you got to find that guy and let's be mad at him. And that's
Hmm.
Scott Strickland. And, I'm frustrated too with how this program has performed. I think that's part of what motivated me to want to be a part of something to get involved. And so, that led me to get in. And then, the thing with, I actually had to criticize my friend James DiVirgilio. I think he was a little premature. He put out a tweet that I didn't like at all a day before the press conference saying, we got another Billy Napier, and on paper, he's the same guy. And,
Hmm.
uh, well, you can look at statistics, and that's data, and that is part of it. But like, he's not the same guy, and I don't like want to compare to contrast, because I also really respect and like Billy Napier for a lot of things that he did, and there's a lot of things that Florida is a much better position now than when he took it. So all that is true, but like, there is an edge to this guy that came out in the press conference. I mean, in our first interview when we got done, I said to Scott and Duke, I'm like, if he's going on a Navy SEAL operation, I'd follow him. Like, let's go. And then after the press conference yesterday, I kind of like wanted to play football again. Like, there's this fire that,
Yeah.
you know, football is a combat sport, and it's young men in a combat sport. And so, like, to be able to tap into that raw emotion, the warriorness, and to lead that with the group of guys is so important. Another piece about John that I really liked, like, I see this all over the place in life. I'm actually thinking about writing a book that's called, How the Heisman Stiff Armed Me. And the subtitle would be How Being Successful Stunts Your Growth as a Human. And I just, as people get more successful, they take less and less feedback.
Mhm.
And so you see it in all the times. And so I seen so many successful people and coaches that they just think they've got all the answers.
Yeah.
And one of the things you see with John is this warrior fight mentality. He's really, really smart, but the way he values feedback and the way he builds the program to get feedback, including for himself, uh, is really beyond anything else that we talk to. And so, like, he's getting feedback, he's listening to feedback, and he is constantly evolving and changing and growing. and doesn't need to be the smart guy. He wants everyone around. He wants to facilitate the smartness of all of us. Yeah, that's a one funny bad sentence to say about intellect when I didn't do it correctly with the grammar, but that's something that I think really set him apart uh, from others. And when you go from sort of your dream candidate and Gator Nation, and a lot of us, thinking it was going to be one person, like anyone else at first was going to be a letdown emotionally, and so, but I think people are starting to realize that like the dude was like moments away from signing with Auburn. The dude was
Mhm.
high on the boards on all these different teams, and the very first time we interviewed him, Chad Chatlos, he said, yeah, he's like, you guys may or may not end up with this guy, but just know if you don't, you're going to be competing against him every year, and you may not like it. Like, so right out the gate, like I think Gator fans need to realize like we didn't just find some other guy. Like this guy rose to the top, and the ability to kind of shift and to lock him in, I think was a brilliant move by Scott.
One of my good childhood friends is a pretty large Auburn booster, and he had called Saturday morning when we were on the way up to the game and was just beside himself at the thought that they were going to lose Summerall. And it was interesting to watch. There was part of me that thought he's going to look at everybody's social media and see Auburn crying that he's not coming and Florida crying that he is crying and be like, okay, wait a minute, maybe I need to rethink my choices here. But he said
Right.
something in the press conference about how that actually like drew him to us, is that the passion of this fan base. And I thought that was pretty cool because like you've seen our crazy and you still want us. um,
That's really, really well said. I think he motivates that, and he understands that it's passion, and he loves passion. And so I think imagine all that passion getting some wins. I was in New Orleans playing for the Saints in the '90s, and we weren't any good. They hadn't really been good ever, but there was so much passion. And I even just thought to myself, if we ever could win here, it would be crazy. And then when Drew Brees came and won the Super Bowl, that town was unbelievable. So kind of reminds me of that.
I remember where I was when you were drafted. I was babysitting for my aunt. I was 12 years old. So it's so funny when you I can literally picture that moment. But let's talk a little bit about Lane Kiffin because I know that that's something that Gator fans want to hear about. It did feel from the outside that it was a very singularly focused mission, and it sounds like behind the scenes that really isn't what it was, but it's what it looked like to fans. They knew they wanted Lane. They felt like Scott Strickland knew they wanted Lane, and with a lot of the family connections to Florida, it felt like a slam dunk from the outside looking in. What was that really like? And where do you think it went wrong?
Yeah. Well, I have a little hesitation just because like out of respect for John Sumrall, like I don't want to over talk about something else.
Sure.
Like, oh, this is the other guy you got. Because again, I think he is fantastic, and honestly, the way some of this stuff has played out in the last several days, I think there's a lot of Gators that are starting to
Maybe
think,
a little
"Hey,
happy.
we
Yeah.
might have dodged a bullet." Actually, time will tell. But I don't think it's true that you can be all in on one person or just sort of playing the field in terms of looking at coaches. You can do both. And,
Mhm.
I think before I even got involved in this search, if you would have asked me, I would have said, there's probably three coaches that would be a reasonable available to be hired that I'd say maybe are a tier one or your top choices. And that would be Kurt Signetti, Marcus Freeman, and Lane Kiffin.
Mhm.
And so, I think, those would be the guys you'd be like, okay, we're going to focus that way. Well, Kurt Signetti signed, Marcus Freeman was committed to Notre Dame. And so, that left sort of in that tier that, and again, all this is guessing. Like
Yeah.
Lane Kiffin's never won a national championship. He's never won an
Mhm.
SEC. You're just sort of guessing who you think's going to help. And as an offensive person, you're looking at someone that puts up offensive numbers and
Mhm.
all the things you mentioned. That man, this could be the great fit. And the guy himself is signaling in all these
Mhm.
different ways that he wants to come. So we definitely engaged hard and heavy. He was a top candidate for us. We went in, and there was, I think, some of the misconceptions out there now maybe were things that before there was any conversations might have been an issue. So like I had heard before we even talked to him that, oh well, he doesn't want your new model and he's got his own GM. That was kind of a big buzzword.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so we went and when we met with them, Scott, like before we even got 10 minutes into the conversation, said, okay, let's talk about this because I really want to make sure you're comfortable. And Scott explained the process and he explained the sort of the structure that we're looking at. And Elaine's like, whoa, no, no, no. Like that's fine. You got the right structure. You absolutely do. He goes, I just think there's a guy that we're using that's a better guy. And so, we're like, well, we'd love to talk to him. So he got thrown in as a part of the GM interview search as well. And we covered that fully acceptable to Lane. I think that was totally finished within a few minutes. And that was not an issue at all. So I think that structure, the GM model, his guy, different things, not an issue with Lane. And then, I've heard another report just got blew up all over the place that his relationship with Scott was weird or something.
Mhm. Yeah, that's all over today.
I know that's really a shame. I mean, we had a fantastic visits. I know they had some good phone calls and then like, I don't know, 3, 4, 500 texts that he sent to me and Scott on a thread. So like there was engagement. He was, if he was a 5-star recruit, he was recruited well. And I think at the end of the day, he just, for his own reasons, which I'm still not certain. I've got some guesses. I think, his son was very, very important in this search and
Mhm.
what he wanted to be and the places he wanted to be at were very important. I do think Lane really cares about being a dad and trying to put his family back together. And so I think that was part of it. And who knows what else, but he, we never even really got to negotiate. We really felt strongly along the way based on what the feedback he was giving us that we were in a really good space.
Mhm.
But then at some point there, he just sort of decided he didn't want to keep engaging, and so that was a bummer. We and at that point we had to make a quick pivot, but we had also been vetting everybody else, so we were
Yeah.
in a very good spot. We knew who we liked, and I think had we waited any longer, we wouldn't have got the guy we really wanted, and we would have been out with Lane. And so I think it was a great pivot, and uh, I enjoyed uh, connecting with Lane, and he communicates in weird ways, and he's kind of a unique guy, but he's a great football coach.
Appreciate Sleeper for their support. There are a ton of more or less picks you can find on their app for the NFL games this week, and then the conference championship games this weekend. Make sure you use my code PEAK, that's PEEK, on the Sleeper app. Check their terms of service for more details because terms and conditions do apply. As always, we appreciate Sleeper for their support.
So, was there ever a point in time where he said, "Okay, I've decided I've moved on," or did he just go silent? Is there truth to the rumor that he was asked to commit, during the holidays and he's planning for his big rivalry game and Florida wanted an answer and he didn't react fast enough and so therefore, we pivoted. Like there's lots of different things that have thrown out there and yeah, the look on your face tells me that's not how it happened at all.
Yeah, I mean, if he wanted to be at Florida, he was going to have every opportunity to be here. We gave him every possible opportunity on his timetable. Like it was, that could have worked. But I'd say two things. One, he chose something else, and that's his choice. And again, two, where I'm sitting right now, I'm glad he did. And like I am so fired up
Yeah.
about how this process unfolded and I mean, even just being there yesterday with John and his family,
Mhm.
we were walking through the football office and they had the LSU press conference on, and I heard
Yeah.
him tell a story. He told a story like with great passion, maybe even a little bit of a tear, and it was like, you know what? I think I've heard that one 15 times. It's like something in my heart said, we got a guy here that I'm excited about. And so I trust the process. I think the process was run extremely well. And honestly, like I, it's hard for me to experience what I experienced the last 6 weeks and not think anything but incredibly high of Scott Strickland. And I'm not like his PR agent. And again, I'm not getting paid at all, but it was amazing process that he ran. He didn't have to involve me. I haven't signed anything. Like he took a risk. He could have, what if he'd have picked somebody that I didn't like, and I'm on here now
Yeah.
hosting him? Like, that's a big risk. And he asked my opinion all along the way. I felt like I was part of the team. And so I really feel bad for him. This last story that came out is really just really not true. Most of the things that everybody's mad about are not true. I mean, we're mad because we're losing football games.
Mhm.
And I'm keep asking him, Scott, why don't you say something here? Because
Yeah.
they're crucifying you. And he's like, you know what, Danny? They want to win. Fans want to win, and I want to win. And if we win, we'll be okay. If we don't win, they deserve to be mad. I'm like, man, you got thick skin, my friend.
Yeah, and you're right that winning cures all ills, but I do think you're also right that like, hey, if you put the truth out there, that helps too, because the only thing that fans hear and see are what other people are putting out there, not people that were necessarily in the room like you guys were. And it's a tough position to be in. Florida is a very passionate fan base. We have a very unique culture here, and you either get it or you don't, essentially.
Let me
And
add something there too. Like part of my process of evaluating people is how they learn and grow. And again, we talked about, are you open to feedback? And, there's different ways ADs go about these searches, and there's different ways that have been effective and times and not. And, sometimes it's just that guy goes out by himself and he does everything and he gets it done. And you got to live with that. And I think the fact that that didn't work last time, you look at what he did was he got me involved, which is a very unique thing to do in this situation. Bringing along Duke as well, hiring turnkey and letting them speak into the process the way, and then also kind of like connecting and really leaning on feedback from a committee of the board of trustees. And so I think that there was just a very different process this time that he had learned from. And I, and again, I'm not going to argue in the past. I thought Billy Napier was a good hire based on everything back then and what was available. It just didn't work out. But this process led us to this guy, and I'm very excited.
I do think sometimes we have revisionist history. I think about, all of the coaches we've had since Urban who haven't worked out, but, we'll say, oh, we hired a coordinator with Muschamp, but he was the coach in waiting at Texas. And if we didn't hire him, he was going to be the head coach at Texas, or somebody else was going to grab him. I think that that's the same thing. Billy Napier, LSU was interested in him. There were other programs that could have hired him. Dan Mullen was the hottest name. If we hadn't grabbed him from Mississippi State, somebody else would. So you're right in that we look back and we say, oh my gosh, how could we not have seen that this person would have failed? But the reality is there's one champion a year. And so everybody else fails, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it
Oh,
is
what the other reminded me of the other narrative was like from the beginning, and then like I think someone kept feeding Lane Kiffin this narrative that Scott was going to be all up in your football business and meddling and telling you how to run your program, which is like we all wanted him to meddle more. It's like
literally totally
it's like
counter to what we were
it's like
screaming last year.
he's like meddle more, please, and like he's like no, I feel like I hire the guy and then I let them and lead, and I try to say some things like so. It's like I'm like that's so ridiculous, and I'm like Lane, don't listen to some of that noise. Like if anything, he should meddle more. so
Right. You actually get a far longer rope than the governor meddling in your business and
seriously,
whatever else
right?
that'll happen elsewhere. Well, and it's Strickland's when he let go of Billy Napier in his press conference, he said something along the lines of, when I hire my coaches, I let them do their job. And, maybe that's part of why we're standing here. And that is true. If we'd hired an offensive coordinator, you wouldn't have been involved in this search this year, more than likely. And so I do think it's so interesting how the narrative goes, but I do think if you stay silent, then the narrative goes where the narrative goes. So interviews like this are important because you were there, you were through this process. You're not, I know people are going to say, well, he's saying what the UAA wants them to say, but you've made it clear you don't work for the UAA. This was your personal experience with this search. And it doesn't seem like it was nearly as discombobulated as many of us thought.
Oh, that's for sure. I mean, it was tight. It's funny because for a while it was we're doing great because you're not hearing anything. It was like, oh, they're secret, and everybody else is loud. Is like we did our process. Not many people knew what was happening. I was very very impressed with how it was run. I also think we haven't talked about it yet, but I do think it is a very important move to kind of introduce a new structure and bringing in more of a true general manager to help kind of guide the program. I think the jobs become too big for any one coach to do. Nick Saban was probably the last sort of unicorn that could do all that as effective as he did. But honestly, I don't know that he could do that anymore because it's continuing to get complicated. And probably the biggest things that I learned was just the intricacies of how to navigate college football now with the portal and with the NIL and with the rev share and how do you allocate and balance all those things. And so I think it's going to require that. And I think again, between the trustees and Scott sensing that and moving in this direction is going to be great for Florida in the future.
Well, I think that's an important thing to flesh out because I'll tell you completely honestly, from the outside looking in, it felt to me like, are we trying to create a buffer between the athletic director and the head coach? Like, you don't get to hire and fire three coaches. So if there's this buffer, does that help you in some way as the athletic director? But tell me what you foresee the structure being and where this is going to vastly differ from the structure we have. We have somebody in theory on staff that is a GM last year. What's going to be different about this model?
Well, first, I never caught any wind of anything like what you had just mentioned of just trying to have a person there. I think everything we talked about was the job has gotten so big that we ask a head coach to do too much,
Yeah,
and they need more help. And I honestly think
fair.
that if just for instance, as an example, that if someone like Dan Mullen had a really high quality GM, he might have thrived because he was such a good play caller, such a good offensive minded guy. But every time I saw him, he had four phones and he was tired of texting kids all day long and all night long, and like it would just wore him out. It'd wear me out too. I wouldn't want to do it. So like I get that. So I think that was sort of the premise. Now, when you think of structure, there's no like one structure in the NFL. There's multiple teams that do this differently. Sometimes you hire a GM and he runs everything, and then he hires and fires the coach and it reports to him. Sometimes you've got a head coach who may also be the GM, and so he's kind of in charge of everything. A lot of times you've got a GM and a coach that both report up. So the model we have is more of the last one there, where you're going to have a head coach and a GM.
Mhm.
They are partners in building the program. The coach is the face of the program. The coach is the voice. The coach is going to drive. This is the type of players I want. This is the team I want. Go find that, build it. But they both report to the athletic director, and I think that creates a lot of really positive things for the program. The key is those guys working well together, and so that's another nuance to this whole thing when you're trying to hire a GM and trying to hire a head coach, and finding the right people that can connect and work well together is another needle to thread that I think Scott did in a really good way.
So, who identifies the high school talent? In the past, you had a recruiting coordinator that kind of sifted through all of this stuff, showed options to coaches, and they decided who to go after. Is there still a recruiting coordinator that handles that? Is that now on Dave Caldwell? Where does that original high school talent get identified?
So you'll kind of almost have two different departments. Most colleges now will. One would be the recruiting department, which in the NFL would be sort of like the college scouts,
Okay.
and then you'll have sort of the NFL scouts that are looking for trades in free agency would be more of like the portal. So you almost have two different programs. Now you could even make an argument you need to add a third, which is kind of retainment,
Yeah.
a group
Yeah.
that's but it may be some crossover. But really, you've got three groups that you're working on every year. You're trying to work on your own roster. You're trying to work on the high school, and you're looking at the portal. So those would be at least two departments, and they would report up. We've got some really good people in the building now. I think actually we did that very well.
Mhm.
In terms of bringing in talent and measurables and length and height and speed and strength. So like we've got a really good roster. So I think Dave will have a lot to work with there and try to figure out. But yeah, you'll have the guys that are looking and recruiting. The coaches will still be involved in recruiting. They still have to be a part of that. But like they really shouldn't be involved in like the negotiations and that kind of stuff. You kind of want to keep that off the coaches so they can just relate and coach players. And I think it's a much better system going forward.
Do you have any fears about NFL translating to college? I feel like, Spurrier is a great example. Like, there's just so many coaches who thrive in one or the other. And it's a little bit more of unknown territory when we're talking GM because that's kind of new in college football. But I can see why that could be a fear, though, because generally, unless you're, Harbaugh or Pete Carroll, it doesn't usually work where you're great in both locations. Do you have any fears that Caldwell will have a learning curve in college, or having met with him, do you think this is going to work well?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, yes, I think, I kind of think about the NFL in this role a little bit like you're in a really sophisticated boxing or jujitsu competition, but it's defined. There's rules. There's referees, and I feel like kind of this role in college. There's a bit of it that's like being in a street fight. You may have to grab a knife or a stick. You might be negotiating with Jimmy Sexton, or you might be negotiating with the kid's uncle, and like it's more of the Wild West. So there's definite learning curve. I think that's a big part of it. I think I also think if we were to look right now, like in the NFL, like someone asked me about Dave, and a lot of people know Dave more than some other GM because he was with the Jaguars, and there's some bad history there. I think there's been some tremendous growth and learning. I think working with Howie Roseman, who's arguably one of the best GMs now or ever, and Howie strongly recommending Dave means a lot to Gator Nation because Howie really cares about the Gators. But like, if you were to just right now say, let's pick any five starting quarterbacks in the NFL, and let's say some of them are like on the top tier and maybe one on the bottom tier, it'd be like, would we take that guy if he could come play quarterback next year for us? Like, probably yes,
Yeah.
because it's the level of play, and so I think the level of sophistication that, in particular, like the ability to identify talent, to really look at it and find it. It's also a nuance, not just to say who's the 5-star kid, but like which kid fits this system. Which type of tight end do we want? Like, that's a great offensive lineman, but if we're going to do like wide zones, like he's not as fast as the other guy. But if we're going to do more power and other things, maybe we do want a bigger guy. And so kind of fitting that to that, and then it really gets tricky when you get into the not just the evaluation, but the valuation. Like, you've got to create value, and that gets pretty tricky. I've learned a lot in that, and so I think the level of sophistication from the NFL will translate. I think, relationally, it's a little more of a relational game, maybe in college in the role, but a good leader, which I think Dave will be. There's some things he's going to do great, and then he'll be able to surround himself with people to do the other things. And I just think having someone at that level that's thinking through that stuff 24 hours a day is going to be really helpful.
You mentioned the relationship aspect, which I think is so important in recruiting. And so many college coaches have spent their entire careers cultivating relationships with high school coaches that Dave obviously will not have yet. And so is there a scenario where he still leans on those people within the program? They're still kept around within the program to kind of bridge that a little bit?
Oh yeah, I think so. I think that's what all those departments do. I don't imagine he's going to have to be connecting with all these different people that you're mentioning. I think, and I imagine a lot of the people in the building now will stay because of those relationships, and then you have new coaches, but that's part of what the coaches are doing all the time as well, and they're just sort of coordinating some of that stuff too. So yeah, be his kind of primary thing all the time. I think is be more overseeing a lot of those things.
Was there anything about him that stood out more than any of the other candidates? Because you mentioned at the beginning of this interview that you were involved in the GM too. So we've spent a ton of time talking about the head coaching search, which I do think is the part that's the most interesting to people. But this is the new part. This is what could really separate Florida from other places. So what stood out about Dave?
Yeah. So again, we had a separate search firm that their job is helping NFL and then now colleges identify and vet So kind of like a turnkey for GMs. And so that, we had another very well run process with that, did a lot of Zooms with multiple GM candidates, and then ended up, I think, doing face to face with four. And then just kind of getting to know them, getting to know their stories. I think one of the things about Dave that stood out was when he sat down, he said, "I'd like to go over your roster," and he had studied our roster, like an NFL guy would study his own roster if he was new there, and like the level of detail amongst every position and what he thought about that, and based on things how he think about going forward, and it was really impressive, very very impressive to do that. I think the trustees zoomed into some of the GM meetings as well, and we're really really excited. And I think this, again, the people that we talked to, all of them were fantastic, and I think any one of them would have been well qualified to do the job. It was just now a matter of who's the best fit, who do we think is connected, and I think Howie Roseman's recommendation carried a lot of weight as well. That he was very high on him. Dave's been working for Howie for a lot of years right now, and they've had just tremendous success.
Did we talk to Rand Carthon?
No, I can't probably go pee on that. I don't know what the um, I hadn't checked on what I should say there yet. So I don't know. I don't know if that's good for him or not to know, or us or not. So I'm going to pass on that question.
Okay, no worries. Well, is there anything else that Gator Nation should know either about Dave Caldwell or about John Sumrall that can, maybe make them even more excited? I really think the press conference yesterday was an absolute home run. I had it on my phone as I was chasing children riding scooters down the driveway, but I really felt like you're exactly correct that he hit on fears head on, which I think is important. Address it, and move forward. And I think a good message to Gator Nation is this is the person that chose us. And that's key. And getting on board with that is important. But what else could we hear about him that would make us even more excited?
I mean, I think I'm really pleased with where things went. I mean, I had seen that side of him. I got to know him. I loved him. I was thrilled as we got kind of in the final of the negotiation. But I was like emotionally several days ahead of the grieving Gator Nation around the other person that they wanted. So I had to kind of live through that initial backlash from people about him, which just made me feel so bad. But I also knew, like, what, one, he's gonna do great at the press conference, but we were strongly, this is the line how he said it, like, winning press conferences is great, but winning games is what matters. And so I think that's the whole thing is going to come down to that. Everything else we're doing now is talking and analyzing and assessing. But at the end of the day, he was the guy we thought is going to bring us to victory. And several years ago, there was a group of people in New England that were just really really excited about their quarterback, Drew Bledsoe. I mean, he was absolutely amazing. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and the guy got hurt. And they were so frustrated that they had to move on to their backup, some nobody that no one had heard of that wasn't drafted high named Tom Brady. So, I'm not saying that's the case here, but I feel that way. I feel like this guy is fired up. He's excited. He's you can tell a little bit of how smart he is in a press conference like that, but like he kind of has this he kind of sometimes he's acting like a strength coach, and you're like, well, that's great, we need a tough guy, but then, like, how smart is he? And the next thing you know, he's like super smart, and then he's self-aware, and so I think at the end of the day, he's an incredible leader of men, and I think he's going to lead our men to greener pastures.
Is there anything that can happen this off season that you think would really just get Gator fans on board completely?
I mean, I think at this point, I think the biggest hurdles overcome, people like that initial thought, and then seeing him. I think there's like, okay, we're gonna give him a chance,
Mhm.
and so I think that's exciting. I think the first thing we're going to find out is how recruiting class went, and you know what. Not long ago, everyone thought this thing was going to fall apart.
Yeah.
And the fact that it looks like it's largely held together is very powerful. The retaining of our players is like which are the guys that are, a lot of people are going to go. That's just natural. But like, who are the guys who are going to stay? Are the key guys going to stay? And I think he's done a great job of already prioritizing that. And then, a month from now, all we'll be talking about is the portal. So those are going to be sort of the stories. I think the next important story will be the OC hire, and see how that goes, and see what kind of interest we have around that. But I think then you're just kind of in the cycle of off season, and can't wait for spring practice, and then hopefully whoever our quarterback is healthy enough to practice all season. Off season, that'll matter a lot, and then we'll be ready to go.
All right. Should we expect to see you around on the sidelines during spring and 2 days in the fall and such?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely feel pretty invested in this. I do live in Atlanta, so it's
Which
hard
is a
to go.
correction for anybody that listened to me say
Yeah, yeah,
Orlando.
you were part of the misinformation campaign.
I
Okay,
was. I said Orlando. I think I said it 2 different times.
that's right.
So
No,
Atlanta,
I live in
Atlanta guy.
Atlanta, but I do have a son in Gainesville, and so it's always good to see him. And my daughter is in high school; she's a junior. She wants to go to Gainesville. So who knows? I mean, I it's really opened my eyes to a lot of things. I've got excited. I really I want to learn the offense with whoever's there, and like not just watch it kind of from a distance, but actually learn what's going on and what they're doing, and just be around. I've gotten to know a lot of the players, and really appreciate and respect them. And then I'm a big John Sumrall fan, man. Like I just really like this guy. I really want him to win. We've liked a lot of our coaches. A lot of people loved some of the coaches along the way that didn't win, and that's a bummer. But this is a guy that I really want to see get there.
All right. Well, you've officially gotten me on. I've seen people say row the boat, row the John boat. So I'm in.
There
I'm
you
on
go.
the boat.
Row the John boat.
Uh,
And one last thing, again, not that it matters, because none of us get a hire or fire anybody on the staff, but I really feel like Scott has gotten unfairly criticized through this. And again, no one's paying me or telling me to say anything. I just, as a person who was in there and then see what's being said, I just didn't think it was fair. Also in life, what matters is your bosses, and are they pleased with what you're doing? And the trustees were very pleased with this process and very supportive of that. So he's got their approval. Now we just got to win another basketball championship, win some football championships, and then maybe we'll all be happy with him too. But anyway, I'm not trying to change anybody's mind on that. I'm just trying to set the record straight as I see it.
well, I think that is important, and all we can go on as fans is what we see, and a lot of times we're not privy to what goes on behind the curtain. And so it's nice to have it kind of peeled back a little bit and see what the actual process is like, because like I said, we see the tickers that go across the bottom of the screen. We see the tweets. We see very outside stuff. And so I think this is important. I would suggest that you stick around and you ask to be a part of the stadium renovation committee
Oh
because
man, they might need some PR help with that.
that is when I got that survey and it asked me where I wanted the party deck to be located, not if I wanted a party deck. I was not pumped. So maybe we can turn
I haven't signed up for that project yet. My job was to help Florida football be better, and I got roped into picking a coach and helping with the GM. And I got home today, like literally, my wife and my daughter now they're like wondering, they don't know where I am anymore for the last 6 weeks. It's been exhausting. It's been amazing. I've like Zoom calls in the middle of the morning and the middle of the night. None of the coaches. We obviously want to keep things private for a lot of reasons from the
sure.
Florida side, but like none of the coaches want at all their schools to know because they're coaching, and that there's all sorts of dynamics there. So like the amount of secrecy and it's like, meeting people in the alley, and I'm not quite that, but it's exhausting. So anyway, I just got home today. Maybe my life can get back to normal. I'm wearing my Werfel Foundation shirt. We're getting ready to announce the winner of the Werfel Trophy for community service. We've got our 3 finalists, and Michael Taff, who had the big interception in the Texas game, is one of the finalists. Tanner Wall from BYU and Michael Hofer from Toledo. So I'm going to get back to the important work that I do at Desire Street and Werfel Foundation, and I'll leave you and all the good people to keep talking about Gators. And if you ever want me back, just holler.
All right. Well, I will absolutely take you up on that. And congratulations to all 3 of your finalists. I'll be paying close attention to see who wins. You do great work in the community, and I really do think you provided a huge service to Gator Nation, and everybody should feel better that one of our own was deeply embedded in this decision process. And hopefully
Well, thanks.
everybody gets on the bandwagon. Well,
Let's go. Go Gators.
go Gators. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
All righty. Bye-bye.